After years of one-to-one sessions with producers at my Patreon, I keep hearing the same problems come up. So I wanted to create a breakdown of the 5 biggest reoccurring problems with tips to help solve or even wipe out these common issues. Let's dive into it. So many producers would claim that they're bad at sound selection, and there's a few tips that I would gravitate towards to have you ironing out these kinks in no time. First off though, stop spending all of your time at the start of a session finding new kicks, new snares, new hats. If you've been making beats for a while, or even a few months, you've probably got some nice sounds in your collection. Set aside some time to find a good few kicks for various scenarios. Something aggressive for hip hop, something well-rounded for electronic stuff, and something with an acoustic thud for anything alternative. There has never been a listener that has called out a producer for using the same kick again on an album. And as a drummer, I've never switched up my kit for other drums halfway through a gig because I have the fear that I'm using the same sound twice. We really don't need to do it as producers. I would set aside what I call an admin day. Set up a folder of a few kicks, a few snares, some hats and some percussive loops that you can use as a go-to until you feel like switching it up once again. With these samples readied comes the first hurdle of sound selection. If you think your sound doesn't gel, take a look at the reverb tail and the space amongst your sounds. If I take a snare sample that has a big room sound baked into it, and then a nice dry kick, and then a perk that sits somewhere in the middle, they're going to feel a little bit off. This is because the listener can hear those samples occurring in different environments. We want to make them cohesive, so shave off that excess reverb. You can do this with warp modes or the old-fashioned cut and fade way. And after this, add a splash of your own reverb, but apply it to everything. I keep my reverb tail for the snare at the loudest, and then everything else should fall under that. We'll also have problems with sound design when we combine acoustic, human, or organic elements with perfect, glossy, often electronic presets. What we want to do in an example where they blend more harmoniously is create some analog imperfections. Think about a band like Tame Impala that might mix in live vocals and acoustic drum kit with synths. Why does it sound so good? Well, the synths take on the same qualities that the acoustic elements do. Human imperfections. We can get closer to that sound by adding filters so it doesn't sound as bright, or saturating a sound for added color, or adding vibrato to it so it sounds a little bit imperfect in its pitch. I'd also like to add that I have a video on the LMH theory, and I think that could also help your sound selection problems. But next up is arranging. Often when I ask folks how they practice arranging, they'll start with, well, first I make a loop, and then and I think here lays the most important problem. When you're about to sit down to practice arranging, you start by making a beat. You're probably fatigued before you've even began. Have you ever seen Steph Curry shooting threes at practice? He's not focusing on dribbling, passing, or any other skill. He'd get too winded by the time he got to shooting. It's just about dialing in that muscle memory of that one important element. And that's what you need to do. If you have a loop that's already made up, terrific. But if you want to take out any room for error, use 4 loop samples from the same sample pack. See how many ways you can arrange this quick loop while still keeping it fresh and turning it into a full song. See how I use this filter here to create space in the B section for a new element to be introduced. Throughout an arrangement, I'll ensure I use high and low pass filters to exaggerate or isolate frequency bands. I'll ensure that my song doesn't get too repetitive for long stretches of time. You can look at your arrange page without listening to it and know if it's stuck in the loop. So add breaks without drums, isolate the perks, pitch up a sample, low pass things, remove the chords, and just keep the bass line to add interest to the elements you isolate. And you can get better at this by using reference tracks too. So why not add some markers at the top of the page as well? Let's talk about gear acquisition syndrome and becoming too reliant on presets. This is a 2-for-1 point. In tons of sessions with my producers, they'll say, I just bought X synth, but I don't know if I need Y synth as well. Or there's a new piece of hardware that's coming out, but I don't know how I'll integrate it within my DAW. I want to remind you the importance of knowing your workflow and the importance of knowing subtractive synthesis. First up, let's look at how you create music. You see, if you use your software like a tool and you know it inside out, you'll understand how you work and where your strengths lie. I find it hard to commit to a drum pad. I've used the Machine, MPCs, MIDI fighters, but the thing is I play actual drums. And the act of chopping up samples will never be faster than quickly cooking up a groove on the kit. I also know exactly how I use Ableton and what takes me the most time. So when I came across Snapback, for instance, which was in last week's video, I think, I said to myself, oh, this is such a time saver because this element of beat making normally takes a lot more steps to complete. Therefore, that purchase made sense to me. Oftentimes, producers will get caught up in the UI of a device and the presets that it has, therefore buy up all the synths. They've got Serum, Phase Plant, Vital, and Ana, but they're all capable of replicating similar results. However, the second and most common point I hear is how do I get this synth to sound like this reference? And here's where sound design comes in, or subtractive synthesis. I have a video on this, but I've been meaning to update it, so if you want to see that, let me know in the comments. But basically, if you learn the process of subtractive synthesis, you'll not only learn how to edit your favorite presets and make them more unique to your sound, you'll also be able to quickly create your own patches and even understand hardware synths too. Almost every synth has oscillators, a filter, amplitude, envelopes, and LFOs, and oftentimes in that order. So knowing how to adjust your ADSR and apply LFOs to other parameters will also really illuminate if you need to purchase that new synth or if you're capable of creating the same sound in Wavetable for free. The next point that comes up often is thinking that not having music theory is their biggest problem. I want to preface this point by saying that if you do invest some time into learning just a bit of music theory, yes, melodic, harmonic, and rhythmic ideas will be vastly improved and you'll understand things just that little bit easier. However, if you're just starting out or you're just a little bit too long in the tooth to commit to learning music theory, I want you to know that you have so many tricks and techniques at your disposal. My music theory isn't great. I can find my way around the keyboard, but generally it's a bit slow and I tend to gravitate to the same chord progression every time. It's the one I learned when I was 14 and I love it. What I do know is how to use my gear and how to get it to work in my favor. So knowing how to transpose or apply scale devices to my chord progressions is a big time saver. Knowing how to repitch my samples to C, or having basic knowledge of Googling the relative minor or major of a key signature helps me unlock more sampling options. Knowing that I can use this MIDI trick to create a chord progression is super handy in a pinch. Turn on scale mode and then create a melody that is in keeping of that scale. You can then take all of these notes and pitch them up 7 semitones. From here, you can take the bottommost notes and pitch them up 3 or 4 notes, whatever's in keeping with the scale, which will create a mix of major and minor chords. And then for added flavor, you can take the middle notes and pitch those up 7 semitones. And generally keeping my melody inside of a 7 semitone leap will ensure that the gaps that I create in my melody aren't too jarring for the listener, and it's more likely to be an earworm. There's also plenty of built-in tools to your VSTs or DAW that help you create music that is in key or in keeping with the groove that you want. Don't forget to take some time to learn them and practice with them. Not every session that you sit down needs to be a session where you build and finish an entire track. You can spend an hour looking at the transform and generative tools inside Ableton's piano roll. The options really are infinite these days, and there's just a couple of suggestions. Finally, the topic that comes up time and time again is once you've finished your piece of music, you have no idea how to promote it. So the song is finished, you think it's a bop, you release it only to put it on your story and say, "Hi, I've just released some new music and there's a link in the bio if you want to check it out." Then a week later you wonder, Why is it that your mum is the only person that's listened to it and assume the next song will do a little bit better? If that sounds familiar, dude, you've got to switch it up. There are so many things that you can adjust here, and my Patreon clients know that we can easily spend an hour or even multiple sessions on this topic. So in this video, let's just look at a few things that you can adjust immediately. First, schedule your release far enough out. I think 3 to 4 weeks seems to be common knowledge, but making those weeks count isn't. If you're releasing a track, submit it to Spotify and Apple playlists, and be sure your artist accounts on both platforms are set up too. Other platforms also have similar options, so do your research. Next, I would see if a blog, site, or channel can debut your song. Partnering with platforms bigger than your own can help you reach new audiences. When Rebecca and I released Chapter 4, I think it was Stereo Fox that wrote this amazing article for us. We used it to promote multiple posts, and it also benefited the blog with more views to their website. We also made sure to continue a narrative for our listeners to follow when we released. When we released Afternoon Tea and it hit 1 million streams, we promised to release more tracks at different milestones. And at 2 million streams, we just dropped Chapter 4. Each of our songs kind of builds on the last and invites listeners to discover the full story. So if you're a new listener and just discovered Chapter 4, you've probably heard us talk about the success of Afternoon Tea. So you might be inclined to go back and listen to that. And if you listen to Afternoon Tea, you might have heard us speak about all of the artwork of that EP being made up into one larger picture. So it might push you to check out the other singles so you can discover the full picture there. Don't just drop single after single is what I'm saying. I think you should follow what I call the Mariah Carey roadmap. She promotes her Christmas song every year, and she puts in the effort to keep it alive. She's on morning radio, she's on podcasts, she's doing tours, shows. You would think that it's her favorite song. It's not just an afterthought link in bio on the story. And you need to do the same. Also, before your single drops, create video posts that fit social media trending formats. And notice how I said trending formats and not trends. When social platforms drop a new format like Reels or carousels, they want you to use this new tech and will actually share you to more people in reward for using it. So sharing a single picture post at 2 a.m. might be the reason you're not getting many ears on your new track. And with that, think about the time you're posting. I tend to go for the commuter times when folks are traveling to or from work, or the relaxing evening hours for added engagement. I share 15 minutes to the hour or 15 minutes past the hour, as folks normally make plans at like 7 or 7:30. But those in-between moments, you're capitalizing on people just kind of killing time. I genuinely think you can get about 3 to 4 weeks of promotion from one song utilizing a range of techniques. So on social media, show how the artwork came together. Something organic as well, not just hit this generative button on an AI software. But you could also post behind the scenes videos of your writing process. Remember, your audience doesn't need to know when you filmed the video after the song was complete. You can also use stems of your track, which are drenched in reverb and delays, and you can do glitchy stuff with it to create like an ambient teaser of the final song. You can create remixes of your own song, give away the project to a section of the song, or show creative techniques of how you use the software, or share your happy accidents. There's really an endless amount of ways to be creative and keep your audience engaged. But finally, once your song is out, promote it across different playlists and build relationships with curators. My favorite method is the Playlister tool via DistroKid, which is today's sponsor. As well as being my favorite distributor, it also connects you to real curators and can help with your future releases. I keep a Google Doc with everyone who's ever shared my music on it, so I can reach out again later with the next single. Finally, I'd suggest creating your own playlists and support your friends' music too. Our community playlist over at the Discord, Lo-Fi Focus, helps boost monthly listener counts by thousands. If my friends have a track come out, it often goes straight to the top of the playlist. And oftentimes when my new song comes out, they're inclined to share it on their playlist as well. That's why I stand by the fact that we all grow together. There's no gatekeeping here. On that note, that concludes the 5 main areas I see producers tripping up time and time again. I hope it was helpful for you, and let me know what your biggest struggles are below. I'd love to create a follow-up to this video and help you out as well. As always, there's bonus content over at the Patreon. This week, I think I'm dropping a sample pack, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Oh, also, I'm inclined to bring back lives, maybe like the lo-fi live stream, to the Patreon. So if you're a Patreon member, I also want you to comment and let me know what you'd like to see in kind of like exclusive lives. All right, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll catch you soon.